We've got a lot of schools in the state that need a lot of work. One of my school districts, Valley View, for example, has a sewage problem to where the classrooms are forced to smell raw sewage during the day because there's a leak. And the only way to repair this is to rip up the entire floor. It goes through several classrooms. It goes through several, it's extremely expensive. Valley View hasn't been able to pass a bond in a very, very long time to fix it.
Senator Trakel, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Last time we spoke, we were talking, it was right before the session, right? It was in December.
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
And you were talking about different bills that you were hoping to bring forward, specifically things with education where you felt that there was not enough safeguard in place to allow parents to have a voice in things like school board meetings, where the school board might be doing something the parents don't like, and they don't have to allow for public comment. And you wanted to put that into law. Talk to me about that.
Okay, yeah. So originally when we came here, we wanted the public testimony law, is what I'm calling it. Now, this didn't come from my school district. My school district, and just about every government agency I've been to in my district is really great with public testimony. Our city hall is amazing. I actually created this using the structure that the city hall uses. So I love the way our city hall in Caldwell does it. Our school board allows public testimony. It's one of the few that does. My understanding is Nampa doesn't, and a few others don't. I could be wrong, but a lot of people came up to me. I know a lot up north where a lot of people have reached out to me don't have this opportunity. So we just wanted to make it statewide that before every government agency that makes decisions on taxpayers and costs them money and makes decisions on their children or what it might be, you should have an input on it.
So with that in mind, you wanted to push that type of protocol out to school boards and other areas that
all government agencies,
right,
that make decisions on. So your let's see what else is out there. Your public works groups, when they're making decisions on what's going to happen within your community, new subdivisions going or something, like people should have a chance, an opportunity. A lot of times they do right before city council and stuff like that, but it would be a good decision. Currently the bill, so it did get its print hearing in the Senate. I ran it right away. I think it was one of the first three bills I ran. It was one of them. Yeah. And it's been held ever since. The issue with it is it was a little too broad, and it did open it up to public testimony so it was never meant, and I don't want this to sound wrong, it was never meant to go at the state level, because at the state level we do it. We allow public testimony. We have the whole committee hearings where the individuals can come in and testify and talk like that. So it was never meant for that. It was meant for more of the municipalities and local levels and stuff like that. So I have to make some tweaks to it and changes because otherwise I might I might change the way it's done at the state capitol.
Gotcha.
It wouldn't be for the better. It would be for the worst, because right now I really like the opportunity, people being able to come in and they get their 2 minutes. I wish it was longer, but I understand why it's not. I mean, you see some committee debates go on for hours on hours. And last year, the school ESA went on for 3 days, I think it was, the testimony. So there is a point eventually where you have to cut it off, unfortunately. But yeah, so it needs a few more tweaks to be done to it, but I'll be bringing it back next year.
Okay. One question I have, because things like school board meetings were the absolute most ignored thing in the world before the world shut down, right? And then you had people flooding in saying, hey, this is not right, what you're doing. And I think a lot of people have a concern that if you make this at the municipality level, where it's kind of like, hey, school boards, you have to allow this public comment, people would take the opportunity in just normal business, not in the most inflammatory cases, but in just normal business, to derail the workings of school boards. They're like, hey, let's get 100 people, because they don't even have to be from the municipality, right?
No, they don't have to be.
Right.
I'm not sure. I know my school board, and this is the one, and I don't even think my city council does it, but my school board, I know you put down if you're from Caldwell or something like that. And I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe they give priority to the actual residents that live there, which I think is the way it should be. I don't want somebody from Lewiston coming to talk to my school board. It's my school board. Let me talk to my school board.
Right. Right. So, or worse, people from out of state, because they're political action organizations. Like, for instance, the district that I came from in California, I remember watching one board meeting, and there was this activist, not even from the district, coming in, like making all this noise, saying all these things, saying very inflammatory comments about racism and all this stuff. And some of the conservative parents were like, you're not even from here.
Yeah,
you're here on behalf of some organization with an agenda to affect our municipality, right? And that's a really distasteful piece to me. Do you think that's one of the reasons why this hasn't been adopted as much, or do you think it's just lower on the priority list?
No, I think my honest opinion is government's afraid to give the people a voice in front of it. And so I actually brought this bill for myself, and Senator Nichols brought this forward last year. And that was the arguments against it in the Prince hearing, is that they're going to take over the meetings. It's going to become inflammatory. We had very specific rules, and there's very specific rules in this bill on what can and cannot be discussed. And you have to have, like, I understand freedom of speech, but there's still professionalism. If I get up there and I start swearing and cussing, and
sure,
I'm going to be removed. It's public indecency. It's a public forum. There has to be decency to it. You'll get removed. So none of that would have been changed. That doesn't give a person an individual go up, directly attack somebody. Right? There were specific rules on how it had to be conducted. And the Supreme Court has even, through legislation, or not, they don't legislate, through court proceedings and rulings, they've determined, what is and is not considered. Sure. Can somebody get angry at a meeting? Yes. Somebody can get angry at a meeting. There's plenty of Supreme Court cases where somebody was kicked off because they were mad and the school board didn't like it, and they sued, and the school board lost, and it was in violation of freedom of speech. But there's also cases that shows where people get up there and start attacking, swearing and cussing, and they get removed, and they sue, and they lose because it wasn't a public indecency forum.
Right.
So yeah, there's already rules. I just think it's a big fear, like you mentioned. That's what goes viral on YouTube, right?
Oh,
the
yeah.
Parents and the arguments at the school boards.
MTU Studios is the proud producer for the Ada County Sheriff Podcast, the Idaho Wildlife Federation Podcast, the State Representative Ted Hill Podcast, the Idaho State PTA Podcast, and many more. If you or your organization is thinking about starting a podcast, MTU Studios would love to help. Just check out mtustudios.com. And the school board's trying to shut down the parent, and the parents, screaming all kinds.
Whether legitimate or not, and those are what go. So that's the image everybody gets. They think something like this would allow you to go in and take over the entire meeting. But my bill specifically said, it laid out specific amount. You can time limit people to speak. Sure. You can maybe you only allow a half hour of testimony. It doesn't even have to be that much, but maybe.
But you're required to have a half an hour. Right.
Well, I didn't put a retire.
No. I'm not saying, but that's the idea. You have a time frame where maybe it's not an unlimited time with an unlimited number of people. You can establish time limits per person. You can establish time limits for the entire thing, but you have to have at some point
a cutoff. Theoretically, to business.
Yeah, right.
Right. And you had to speak specifically to. We'll use school board for example. If I go before the school board, I have to speak only to issues that the school board has authority over. So I can't go in and talk about immigration because the school board has absolutely nothing to do with immigration. I can't go in there and talk about commerce and trade or something like that. It has to be within the scope of that government agency's authority. Gotcha. So you can't just go in there and complain about whatever you want.
The buses, the Ada County Transit or something.
Yeah, something like that, because the school board doesn't take, so you'd have to go in and talk about educational.
Gotcha.
Issues only.
Sticking with education, there are two funding issues that seem to be a lot of parents are talking about. One, you have the some people call it a voucher, some people call it a tax credit. You call it all kinds of different things, but essentially allowing public education funds to be given to individuals, so the money follows the student, so that can go to a private institution. And then there's the school facilities, right? Mm-hmm. How do we fund school facilities? Different issues, obviously. These aren't wrapped in the same one, but why don't we tackle them? Whichever one you want to hit first.
Okay, let's touch on let's do school facilities first. I think that's the easiest. We've got a lot of schools in the state that need a lot of work. One of my school districts, Valley View, for example, has a sewage problem to where the classrooms are forced to smell raw sewage during the day because there's a leak. And the only way to repair this is to rip up the entire floor. It goes through several classrooms. It goes through several, it's extremely expensive. Valley View hasn't been able to pass a bond in a very, very long time to fix this. I believe last election they finally did.
Yeah, they with like said they really connected with the community. I think that passed with like 70% approval.
Yeah,
I had
a really high one.
Alicia Purdy from Valley View.
Oh, okay,
recently.
great.
She was
She's a great lady.
fantastic. Yeah, incredible.
She's always in my ear. She's great. I love her a lot.
Yeah,
She's
to talk about engaged.
We don't always agree, but she's amazing.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like she's this freedom loving Texan who finds herself here. She's an educator, and it was really cool talking to her because it's like, okay, you're obviously conservative, and there's this large sentiment that if you're in education, you naturally have to be like some purple hair crazy liberal. It's like that's not true. No. You can have plenty of conservative people that believe in public education. Like these are not opposites. Anyway, so it was cool talking to her. Yeah. Anyway, continue on.
Yeah, she's great. She's definitely a fighter for the kids, big time. She doesn't like the ESA ideas and stuff like that. Sure. I understand why. Yeah. I'm obviously a big fan of them, but kids are forefront to her.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, so you have problems like sewage in Valley View.
So you got problems like that. Yeah. There's a school up north that I didn't know this. I just found this out Thursday, I think it was. There's a school up there. It's been built in 3 different sections. They're still using all the sections, and the oldest part was built in 1930, and they're still using it. But very small population. They can't get it fixed up or anything because they can't bond for it. They just don't have the population for it. So on and so we definitely have to have a school maintenance that fixes these schools up. Because if you're going to a place that's cold, run down, falling apart, or whatever, it's not conducive to learning. Kids aren't going to like it. I don't want to take the spotlight away. I've got a friend of mine who's city council in Middleton, and he's running. So I remember I talked.
What's his name?
I don't want to say it.
Okay, no problem. We'll talk.
I don't want to throw any. Because he doesn't know I was going to talk about it.
Okay, no sweat.
He's got this amazing idea, and I've been working with it for a while, and I wanted to bring it. I haven't been able to figure out how to do it, but to curb population growth until schools can catch up, type of way. He's doing it through city council. He's came up with a plan in Middleton. They've got kids learning in the hallways. That's how overcrowded they are. They can't pass a bond. They can't build a new school. He's come to me, hey, you guys need to build us a new school. I'm like, man, we give you guys plenty of money, So he's taken that idea. He's run with it, and I'm super excited to see because it's exactly what I wanted to do. We've talked about it before. He's doing it in Middleton. We'll see how it takes off, but it's going to be to where development and everything's got to slow until the schools catch up. Which will be great.
That's great. We'll have to talk about that off air. Don't forget. Okay,
no
awesome.
problem.
So there, and again, one thing that when we're talking about school facilities, I was talking to somebody about really rural areas, and they're like, listen, they just, not only can they not pass a bond, but they just don't have the population that would give them the capital to just build even a secondary building, right? Like you might have, as close to a one-room schoolhouse as you could imagine in the, our contemporary age of education. They just don't have the money, right? Yeah. They're just trying to keep the rooms hot and cool and get kids to school because you have much more rural populations, much more spread out. I mean, some kids are doing whatever they can to get to the actual school. Yeah. It's a bit of a train wreck. And again, we don't see that as much in the Treasure Valley, but you go north and you start seeing really different school systems and funding problems that we just couldn't. I mean, sewage is terrible, right? But there are bad things.
But we have. So here's an example, which was great. Senator Lent brought this up, dealing with 521 and school maintenance funding. So you have, we'll use West Data, and I believe he used Lewiston, right? Mm-hmm. 2 different extremes. West Data, the largest. Lewiston's one of the smallest, if not the smallest. So if they were to bond for, I think he said $20 million $50 million at 20 years. And the way it's all divided, West Data, it would cost every home property owner for every $100,000, $2.62. That's all their taxes would go up by, right? Not much at all. For Lewiston to do it, the exact same bond, the exact same way, for every $100,000, $650.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, those are the issues we have.
Right.
So, the question is, maintenance. How do we figure it out to make it fair? Do we give the rural schools more because they don't have that ability to bond and levy that money out? But then you'll get, and rightfully so, you'll get the arguments from like West Data's legislators. Well, that's not fair to my district. We don't get much just because we're bigger and we're capable of being able to pull out the money. So those are where the arguments are when it comes to funding and stuff. Me personally, I'm like, yes, we are going to take, I live in a very large school district.
Right.
We have no problem passing bonds. We can pass bonds. I'm like, yeah, I have no issue taking a smaller portion of that state maintenance money and giving it to rural schools that can't do anything.
Right.
Because they can't do anything.
Right.
My taxpayers may not like that, you know, and I know, I understand, I do represent my district, but every decision I make affects the state, and we do have that ability, and these other people do not have that ability. So that's where I sit.
I actually have a friend who's a former board member in Lewiston.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she was talking about how it is really difficult to fund those schools, and the problems are just unique. And I don't like the idea of, I don't know how to say this appropriately. Whenever somebody starts talking about equity, my cackles go up. Like I don't like that. I very much believe in meritocracies. I believe in self-determination. I believe in a lot of these things, but there are real problems, especially with public education, when you start talking about completely different rural versus urban, when you start talking about population densities. And we have that a lot here. You know, so again, I don't think equity is necessarily the right word, but having a realistic conversation about, okay, look, we're required constitutionally to provide public education, and the way we have things lined up right now, we're not going to be able to provide it in a similar manner, right? Like these two different communities are not getting analogous educations just as an end result. Like if we look at funding as a mechanism to deliver education, we're not getting the same end result, and that's what we need to focus on.
Yeah, I would agree. Take my district, for example. We could definitely use some new schools. We got an overpopulation problem, overcrowding problem in the school system, which definitely is detrimental to a child's learning. But, you know, you take those places like Lewiston or Weippe or something like that. They haven't, I'm going off of me here. Obviously, I haven't done research up there. I'm not up there. But I'm pretty certain they haven't built a new school in probably a lot longer than we haven't. And they're probably dealing with a lot of issues. And it is the state's responsibility for those buildings to be adequate and conducive to learning. And so if that means, I'm sorry, West Ada or Canyon County, you have to take a hit this year. You're not going to get $20 million, whatever it is, to fix the school, $40 million, because we're going to send it to whatever county, Kuskia, and build a new school up there because they haven't had one in 50, 60 years. I'm fine with that. Because it is the state's responsibility, and every kid deserves an equal opportunity at education. So if that means we have to spread it around, then we have to spread it around. Right. Just the way it is.
Let's do this. First off, pull that microphone a little bit closer. The people want to hear from you, Chris. Senator Trakel, excuse me. No, not Chris. Okay. Makes sense there. And again, this is especially for people in the Treasure Valley, empathizing or understanding the problems with people in Lewiston, probably a difficult thing, right? That's one of the reasons West Ada has such a difficult time passing bonds anyway, because you have people from CUNA not wanting to fund schools in Eagle, or, you know, Stars having huge problems, and people in, you know, Meridian aren't, you know, whatever. So when you're dealing with a large geographic area, it just gets more difficult. So now we get to the good one. Again, some people call them the vouchers, some people call them tax credits, but at the core of it, it's all right, look, philosophically, schools are supposed to be educating students, and a large portion of the population, or at least significant portion of the population in my school district, West Ada, is saying, hey, look, I don't think these schools are reflecting my personal values. So they have several options. They can go to a charter school that says, hey, we're going to make a school, take state money and make a different style program that more reflects the community's values. And they have to have obviously a specific charter that states that, and people can avail themselves of that option. You have homeschooling, and you do get a little support from the state, but not a lot. I'm correct on this, right? Like you get resources, and
I think, well, there's, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, there might be very little things out there, but the homeschool community really wants very little to do with the state.
Right. And I had a wonderful homeschool advocate, Andrea Grommert, on, and she was saying that exact thing. She says, look, I love public school, do right by the public schools, but leave homeschools alone. Like, I don't want anything from you. I don't want regulation from you. I don't want any strings attached with whatever money you might give to me. And I don't care if that's a voucher or a coupon, like whatever. So you have that option. And then a lot of people do the private school route. And again, the private school route, you're coming out of pocket and you get to go to whatever school you want, if they'll take you, obviously. Yeah. But the states aren't funding those. And there's this big argument, which is, hey, man, I'm not being best served by public education. I either cannot do homeschooling or I don't want to do homeschooling. There's not a charter school that I think works. Why can't the money follow the kid? That's the big question. So there are always revisions to this idea, which is let's take the public funds and drop them into, let that follow the kid to whatever private school it is and go that way. The argument obviously for is, hey, increased competition for dollars will force public education systems to improve their education and either more reflect what the community wants or have superior scores to say, hey, we're doing a better job. And obviously, if the private school is doing a better job, then we'll see that, and that will be instructive to our educational systems in general. All of these things, people love education. People love competition. Mm-hmm. The flip side of that is, how are you taking public dollars, stripping them from the public school that has an abundance of regulations and restrictions on it, and then dropping it into like the 30-person private school? What do you think about these?
Well, to touch on how we're pulling money from public schools into private schools, we're already doing that. Money's been going to private schools, state money's been going to private school, and we just passed the launch program. You can take that to NNU, which is a private school, private religious school on top of that. So I hate to break it to people, but it's so many people wanted the launch program. Well, you got it, and that money does go to private school. You can't have it both ways. You can't say, hey, I want people to have a better opportunity to be able to go to school in the schools they want, but no religious or private schools.
Now, the launch program is not for mandatory education, right? The launch program is somebody who's graduated or left.
It's supposed to be, yeah. If you graduated and you go into a specific field, you'll get, I believe it's $8,500 towards college, any college that you want to use for.
Right. So. And again, like, and by the way, I'm not disagreeing with you. Like that obviously is a private school, but we're talking, these aren't quite the same things, right? Because we're talking about a mandatory K through 12 program opposed to something that's actually very self-serving for the community, which is these are much needed careers, and we need more people. Like we need more linemen, we need more electricians, we need more of these people. So it's in the state's best interest to, one, assist in some manner people gaining these skill sets so they'll too stay here and actually find employment instead of having like a brain and employment drain where people have to leave the area. So not quite the same, but I get what you're saying.
It's not quite the same. I'm just saying that I don't want to get into the launch program and the issues that I have with it. Sure. Totally different subject. I was just using it as I'm sorry, taxpayer money is already going to these programs that you say you don't want it going to. Now, when it comes to K through 12, just because the school isn't necessarily reflecting my personal opinion the way it should be, well, then that's my choice. And I should find a school that either reflects that, or whether that be a private school, different public, because we have open enrollment in Idaho. If you can get into it, all the schools are overcrowded now. So do we really have open enrollment where everybody's full? So it's difficult to say. That's a different subject. When I look at it, if it's a personal issue on what's being taught and how it's being taught, well, then you need to take care of that responsibility yourself and fix that. When it comes to the way I look at it is schools need to be conducive to learning for everybody. They need to be neutral. I want a neutral environment. And as much as I can remember being a kid, I didn't go to school and I didn't know any of my teachers' political positions, their leanings. I didn't know where they sat with sensitive issues or nothing. Because you know why? We learned reading, writing, arithmetic, and history. That was it. I didn't know any about these issues. And today you have the education system, in my eyes, failing kids. And what has been the big change with that? Teachers and schools are bringing political ideologies into the classroom that have no reason to be. These are complex social issues that we as adults argue about and can't figure out on our own. But now we're introducing
it to small sixth
children.
Grader. Yeah, right.
That's not right. Just let them focus on learning.
And again, to be clear, that's not every school. That's not every district. School. But there are
nationwide.
Problems.
It's a problem.
Nationally, there are problems. Can I ask you something? And this relates. One thing that I've really realized is that Idaho is paying the price for a lot of problems in other states, right? Like a lot of things other states are doing occupy and consume the time of people discussing policies here. For instance, like we were just saying, the public schools are failing. Okay, right out of the blocks. That's not every public school, right? Or public schools are doing West Ada, neutral campus. You're not allowed to talk about political agendas. You're not allowed to talk about, or excuse me, have different flags. You're not allowed to advocate for your political candidate or whatever, right? And they do address, obviously, politics. You have to study government eventually. You got to study slavery. They're not saying like, oh, whatever. They're not taking a crazy position. But the school districts around here, I have been impressed with to some degree, like, oh, you guys are trying. That's not to say nationally, everyone's trying. Nationally, there are hot dumpster fires everywhere that are just raging into the night, right? And I feel like Idaho gets taken by that. Like, here we are talking, and like, I don't know if you can point to a dumpster fire school district in your area, but again, from my experience, West Ada is really, really trying. Like, I don't think they're a hot dumpster fire, and that's not to say everybody's perfect, but no. Again, it seems that nationally, national conversations and policies and issues are dominating more and more of the time that Idahoans and Idaho legislators and whatnot talk about these things.
Yeah, well, we have a lot of people, you know, we're one of the largest, fastest growing states in the country. So we're getting, these issues are coming with people. Some people want them, so they're bringing them to Idaho. Some people don't want them, and that's why they come to Idaho. I don't think it's a massive issue in our state yet. It's there, the conversation's there, and it makes some attention, but I don't think it's massive like it is everywhere else.
Yeah.
And contrary to what the media believes and portrays out there with me and my school district, I don't believe they're actually out there trying to ruin kids or something like that. Right. It's they blow things up. It gets little. I can't even say Caldwell. Like I'm not happy with their proficiency rates and where it's at. But that doesn't mean it's a dumpster fire.
Right.
We
could be better.
Yeah,
we could
just be better. That's all it is. And if the media would step aside and stop getting in between us, maybe we could come up with a solution.
Right.
But
so I'm sorry. Back to the main issue. So the idea that it sounds like your feeling is that the idea that, hey, the money follows the kid. It's kind of like, okay, but you're making a choice, right? You're stepping out of the public school system that's provided. It's going to be very difficult for us always to provide and fund different entities that reflect everybody's different positions. So if you step out and you go to something like a private school, that's a personal decision.
Well, let me be a little more clear on it.
Sure.
I definitely do. You put it a good way. And I use that as the example of if I personally don't think they're teaching the way it should be. I'm definitely for ESAs, vouchers, tax credits. It's in the Republican platform. And I'm not just saying the state platform. I don't even think it's in the state platform. It's in the national platform. And Republicans have been big on vouchers for
I remember
as far back as I can remember. But anyways, where I think that they're necessary, and I want it in the state, I don't want it as a permanent thing. I don't think we need, we'll just say vouchers because that's what everybody says. We don't need vouchers permanently. I don't want to see a permanent program of vouchers for people to use. We need vouchers until we fix the public school system. So when we can get the public school system, find out what's wrong, why it's failing, get those proficiency rates, those grades, higher graduation rates, more people that can read and function, then we get rid of the voucher program. Because as long as we, the state, we have a constitutional obligation to provide this education. If it's not a quality, good education, why am I going to make you pay for it? That's not right. So if you want to take your money and go somewhere else until I get my act together and get it fixed, you should have that right. And you should be able to do that.
I like this idea in principle. Okay. My question is the argument for charter schools, for instance, or even private schools like we're talking about is, hey, listen, you're a 50% graduation or proficiency or whatever the number is or whatever the metric is. And this private school over here, this is 60%, right? They're doing a better job. I'm going to go over there. That makes sense until you realize that public school doesn't, one, have to take everyone. So they can self-select. They can take the cream off the crop.
You mean the private school?
The private school. Yeah, that school over there. The public school has to take everyone, right? So you're going to have people that wouldn't otherwise academically be able to gain entrance to the private schools. And you can kick people out if they don't perform, and you're not playing by the same rule set, right? So and again, love competition. Let's all get on the table. Let's figure out cream rise to the top. But we can only have competition under the same rule sets.
Exactly.
Right. So like, how do we modify that? Because again, when you're looking at, say, a charter school, I've heard people say in the past, hey, charter schools are really great. Like, well, yeah, I think your local public school would be different too if they could take the top 30% of the students and kick everybody else out. If the charter school had to take everyone that applied, or even didn't have an application, you just roll in. You're like, I'm here now. Hi. Like, you don't even have to fill out an application. Just come on in.
Yeah.
Right. You would have different results. So how do we flush that out? Because again, in principle, I like the idea. Hey, look, until you can fix your problems, I'm going to go to this place that's at 60% proficiency because you're at 50, but they wouldn't be at 60 if they played by the same rule set.
So I'm not comparing, I'm not going to compare private schools to public schools and say, hey, we have to be at the private school level, because you're exactly right. You know, it's like an NFL draft. They pick the top players and they get to be the best team. The state has to set a standard, and we do have a standard of what that proficiency level, where's the bar at? And the state needs to set that. And when we meet that point is when, okay, vouchers are gone. So let's just say, we'll just put it out, a number out there, you know, this isn't necessarily the numbers I'd go for. We want a 60% graduation rate with a 2.7 GPA.
Sure.
All right. Okay, great. That's the bare minimum of what we want. The day we achieve that, bam, the voucher system's done. And everybody's going back to public schools. When all, now not all schools, how do you put it? You know, this is really complicated, you know.
It's very complicated. Yes.
But
absolutely.
it would be, that would be the average that all the schools are at. Obviously, you're going to have some kids failing. You're going to have kids way higher than that. But if let's say we want a 6, when all schools start meeting the 60% graduation rate at 2.7% GPA, then the voucher system's done. I actually had a program myself for ESAs, and how it did is it worked by school district. It wasn't all statewide. It was school district. So if you were in a school district that wasn't meeting the state minimum achievement levels, you had the option to take an ESA program and take your child elsewhere until that district caught back up, and then that ESA program would be done for that area, and would be required to go back. Either, well, you're not required to, but the ESA program would be done. So if you still wanted to go to whatever school you're going to, you're now paying for it out of your own pocket, or you can go back to public schools. The public school is now meeting the standard that the state has set.
That's, you know what, I have not heard about a proposal like that. And again, I think that's having this temporary, like, hey, look, something's going on. You guys clean up your act, fix whatever issues you have, and then we'll come back to it. Mm-hmm. That seems like a reasonable.
Yeah, I think that's the more reasonable, because it's not fair to compare like Boise State to Harvard. Say, oh, people should all go to Harvard because it's so much better. Well, no, it's a totally different matrix, man. They get to pick and choose and blah, 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 the type of people that go there. So the state, we run state public education, needs to set what our level of proficiency is, what we want it at, and then that's what we fight to.
I gotta say, I'd rather hang out with Boise State students than Harvard.
Yeah,
Harvard
I probably would too.
They're not very entertaining.
I've never hung out with any Harvard guys, but
let me tell you, man. Okay, so check this out. This is reality. This will tell you. So again, SAT prep. That's all I did, and there was this one guy who had gone to Harvard, and he emailed me to get his son prep for me, which is fine. He knew somebody who knew me. That's how I got all my business. And he leads off with, I went to Harvard College and like did these things. Like, why are you telling me this? Like, isn't this about Joey? Like your 16-year-old who's not going to Harvard? I'm like, fine. But like, this guy never recovered from going to Harvard. Yeah. Like it seems to me that they lead with this. They're like, this is me.
Well, isn't that the joke? How do you know if somebody went to Harvard? They'll tell you within 5 minutes or something.
I thought that was a CrossFit joke. I don't know if somebody does CrossFit.
It probably fits.
Don't worry, they'll tell you.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, military. That was CrossFit for sure. It's like, I do CrossFit. I didn't ask, bro.
I didn't ask. Like I actually did it briefly for about a year because I couldn't do jiu-jitsu, and there is a culture there. They're like, people want you to know that they do CrossFit, and you know what's interesting is like, why is that? I think it's because I think it definitely is something that they feel they have accomplished something when they're done with it. Like that was really hard. And I'm in like a community of people that do really hard things. And as weird as it is, I was still like, good for you, man. Yeah. Good for you. Like you're doing something that's really hard. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, Marine Corps infantry, that was the thing. CrossFit. It's like, he's like, oh, CrossFit. I didn't like, we had the little tiny CrossFit, like self-set up gyms everywhere. A lot of our PT, I got into CrossFit for a while. It's definitely hard, but it's funny to see those guys walking around.
They are so happy. They are so proud of themselves. God bless you. God bless America. They call it a box too. It was like, you go to the gym, I'm going to my box, my CrossFit box. It's like, awesome, man. Get after it. Other things. So again, we talked about education. There is, by the way, we did talk about the library bill the first time you came, and there have been like now 3 versions of the library bill. This year you had 121, you had like 385. I can't remember.
384, 1289, and now 710.
But we had 1221.
Yeah,
SB
there was
1221.
like
that
that
was
one
a hot
never really
minute.
went anywhere.
Yeah. So we've had 4.
Yeah, there's been 4. I think there may 4 for sure, 100% 4. I bet if I could jump on here, I probably could find 1 or 2 more.
Yeah. The thing I wanted to ask you about this is, look, I think this debate is being had sufficiently. I think people understand what sides people are on. One thing that is interesting to me is, where do you fall in the state versus local control?
Okay.
Because this is an interesting sticking point. And anybody who says, hey, look, there are no inappropriate books anywhere in the school districts, it's like, look, man, I'll pull them up right now. Like, I have no problem. West Ada, again, unilaterally eliminated 10 books, and I think they have like 35 or something more to go. But it's like, I'll pull up all 10 of those books, and if you find these to be not pornography, like, we don't have the same definition of pornography. Like, that is literally people in like multiple different pictures of, sexual acts. So, okay, fine. Like, there are some bad books, and we should have a little bit of something here, little type of reform. But the sticking point that keeps coming down to, that I hear a lot of people arguing about, is, look, conservatism is all about local control, right? It's a smaller big government. That's federal to state, and that's also state to municipality. And that's one of the things that these bills keep waffling on. One is at the state level, one establishes local control. What do you think about that with something like this?
Yeah, so something like that, I'm a huge fan. The closer the government is to the people, the more effective and the better the government it is, in my mind, because the people have a bigger eye on it. The issue we have, though, is when it comes to voting, and you can look at this up with voting records, people don't come out for local elections. When do they come out? Presidential elections. And how's the president determined? Electoral college, not by the popular vote, electoral college. Right. So it's kind of funny. It needs to be separated 100%, but when you have such a small proficiency of people that come out, and then you'll have all these parents or whatever, let's just say, obviously I'm using an extreme here. There's a Hustler magazine in the library. They're saying it can be there. And all of a sudden, all these people start coming out. Oh, it can't be there. Right. It's a really tough question. Does the state step in and say what the standards are? In a situation like this, I say it is a state issue because we have on the books the obscenity laws, our Idaho code. And there is a point, we do have a responsibility to make sure municipalities are following these codes. And a little bit of a different subject, but when we passed the fetal heartbeat bill, Boise was not going to enforce it. So we literally start running into these problems of a municipality refusing to follow state law and enforce state law. So we came up with, fine, you don't want to enforce it, you don't get your sales tax credit. So they're obviously going to enforce it because money speaks louder than people's principles, it seems like, half the time. So in my mind, this is the same thing. We have obscenity laws. What is obscene to children, to protect children in the state of Idaho? And we've taken that at the state level. So in this particular case, it is our responsibility to make sure that the municipalities are following.
If in today's standards, if you have the obscenity law and there's a school district that violates that, is there a repercussion for that school district?
Currently, right now, in the obscenity law, schools and libraries are exempt.
Okay.
That's where the issue's coming from. It literally says libraries and schools are exempt from the obscenity law. Now, this was done, if I remember correctly, this law was passed in the 70s. I think it was my reasoning on why I think it was done that way, and it's a pop culture reference here. There was an episode of The Simpsons where they're starting to get into obscenity. Things are obscene.
Sure.
To the point is
that when they had the statue of David?
Statue of David, yep.
Yeah, and in the end, Marge's hair was like covering that one point. Yeah.
So it went as far as to put jeans on David.
Yeah.
So what I'm getting at is I think this law was specifically exempted schools and libraries because it dealt with art and medical. Because, you can get a medical book. YouTube, you can do this right now, actually. You can see nudity on YouTube if it's under a medical condition. So I'm trying to guess what it would be if
erectile dysfunction.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm just throwing that one out there. I imagine
something on there.
Yeah, right.
You could find it. So, you
or National Geographics. I remember seeing nude people in National Geographics in middle school. I was like, oh my God, it's a boob. No disrespect, Amazon people.
But yeah, definitely. So I think that's why those were there, so that you couldn't have, you'd have a teacher that was showing a Renaissance picture, because in the Renaissance, everybody was naked, and a lot of Greek art, there's a lot of nudity in that. So, and you learn about Greek and Renaissance in school. So they didn't want to get in trouble for pornographic laws or obscenity laws. And in my mind, we as adults can tell the difference between pornography and art. I have heard the argument, and to play devil's advocate, well, what if you take a Playboy versus a hustler? All right, a Playboy is
far more classic style art.
You know, they
Still
claim that's
pornography.
art. It's still pornography though, because the intent of the purpose there is for sexual desire.
Right.
It's not for like a picture of.
It's not a Renaissance portrait. Like
man,
just
yeah, it sounds really bad. I'm trying to think of that lady that's in the giant clam, but like that one. You know, she's naked in the.
Wait, are you talking about is that Baron Munchausen, like that film?
No. I was thinking the painting.
Oh,
so.
I was like, that was Uma Thurman. She came out of like a giant clam.
Oh, did she?
The
Yeah, I
Baron
haven't seen
Munchausen.
that.
Yeah.
No,
Well, I saw it when I was like, I was like 10. It's an old school, like it's almost like an old school superhero movie because they like get trapped in a whale and it's this like fantasy style. There's like the strongest man in the world. And, you know,
I was
Baron Munchausen. Check it out.
I think it was the painting's called Venus something.
Okay,
Venus
great.
the Mile, or I can't remember. But she's naked. She's up in a clam and Cupid's around her and stuff like that. But anyways,
Naked babies.
yeah, naked babies. So I think it was there to separate a difference. And the problem is what we've gotten into. And, you know, for those that say that these books aren't there and what you want to determine as pornographic or not, you know, could I, it seems like they're taking stuff today. Some of these books that I've actually had in my hands that I've gotten from my own library with my daughter's library card, literally have pictures of, and these are supposed to be children. So it's child pornography in my mind, literally having sex. And doing sexual things. And then they go in there and they talk about, they try to justify it by saying like, this is what your body does or so. So they almost try to put a scientific thing or a medical or an educational thing behind it while showing you pictures. So to my mind, that's like showing a pornographic film in a biology class and saying,
this is what your body does.
this is what your body
This is how
does.
you
This is what
reproduce.
sex is.
Yeah.
Well, it's a pornographic film. I can't show
It's like
a
Debbie Does
pornographic-
Dallas. And
Exactly.
they're like, this is one of your options, kids.
Yeah, you know, that's, and to me, so that's what these books are, is they're taking sexually graphic pictures of children having sex with children, whether it's homosexual sex or heterosexual sex. It doesn't matter. It's both in these books. And then they're saying, well, you know, this is how you have sex and this is what happens. No, I'm sorry.
And by the way, we didn't have those books and we figured this out too, right? Like what I'm not understanding is that there's an emphasis of, and again, your point is very well met. And I get where you're coming from. And anybody has a question, look up The Handmaid's Tale, a graphic novel, right? And it's like, okay, those are two people having sex. Like, and this is not from a biological standpoint. Like this is to depict, first off, it's to depict, cruelty to women because the woman who is being had sex with is being held down by this other woman. And then like the guy, oh, it's just a train wreck. Right? I'm like, well, why are we watching this book or reading this book? Anyway, but I get your point there. Like there absolutely are these problems. And I struggle to understand why people are trying to make the argument that we have to educate people. It's like, we've been educating people. We've been doing it. Like I got educated, you got educated, we both had kids, we figured it out. We don't need, and if you want to have actual education, let's make actual education. Let's not bring in novels and things of this nature. Like if you want to have some like really advanced sex ed class that people can opt into or opt out of under the guise of, I want an academic based experience that helps students understand this. Yeah. Make like Sex Ed 2.0 and have everybody sign a waiver and be like, it's about to get real because that's Debbie Does Dallas and like some other stuff, you know, and I don't mean to be crass, but that's almost the level of it is. It's like, you don't have to go this far if we're saying we want to educate people. And if people want additional books and they want to read, you know, things, the argument I've heard is these books need to reflect the children's lived or intended lived experience, right? It's like, okay, fine. That just doesn't have to be here.
Yeah.
Right. Like nobody's stopping you from getting this book on Amazon.
Like, people like they come up. So for instance, all these bills, they say it's a book banning or something. It's not. No book is being refused to be at the library. The library can still choose to have whatever books they want. They just need to be in an appropriate section. And I know a lot of people, you know, you and I will get this, but a lot of younger people don't. Remember Blockbuster and the Black Curtain?
Yeah. Yeah. And then there was this giant argument that the cost of making a separate area that had to be monitored, it's like, why don't you just make that separate area behind the librarian? Like put up a couple bookshelves that like they can literally just like, I don't know. Anyway, the point is, your point is well made. And you feel that then going back to, it was exempted in the 70s. But I think what you're trying to say is it was exempted in the 70s before we had this kind of quote unquote culture war that wanted to insert these types of books.
Yeah.
There was an exemption for literal biology classes and then art and history classes going over, for instance, the Renaissance. That's not what's happening now.
No, I think today people are exploiting. You can exploit anything. And I think that's what they've done. They've exploited this point so they can get these sexually graphic pictures out there and images and then say, oh no, it's all for educational purposes because I put, that whatever statistics
it's a
down
lifestyle
below there.
It's a lifestyle.
Yeah. So, and I think people have just exploited it and it's ridiculous. We don't need that. It doesn't need to be in the school. I'm sorry. When I was in 6th, 7th grade, I wasn't thinking about sex. Girls still had cuties. I think at the time, comic books and stuff, I was all interested in X-Men and Spider-Man and stuff like that.
Hell yeah, you were at Jean Grey and stuff. Hell yeah, you were interested in X-Men. Like there were some hot ladies in those books.
Well, now
that's when you first see women. Like when you're in like 4th grade, you're like, oh, they're action heroes. And then by 7th grade, you're like, she's wearing that black thing again. Like, oh my God. Of course you loved that.
Yeah. But like, yeah, let kids be kids.
Yeah, sure.
I don't even think sex became a thing. I mean, they're talking about kids are having sex now at like 14, maybe even younger, 13, stuff.
I think you've always had some.
I mean, you've always
that
had to a point
neglected and misguided youth that fall into the stuff.
But let kids be kids. I remember, talking about like sex ed for example. There we go. I was opt-in to what I call the most graphic one. And I remember our PE coach is the one that taught it. And it was co-ed. You had boys and girls in there. And he's like, if anybody puts their heads down on the desk, you automatically fail. And it's like, oh man, we had to watch. And it showed a live birth, which has scarred me to this day.
I remember seeing that video too, 6th grade or 7th grade. So yeah.
And then and I remember seeing the image of, it had a I don't know how they got the image, but it had a penis inside releasing sperm, but it wasn't showing sex. It was showing.
There was no music in the background.
No music. There's nothing. It definitely was not sexually arousing. It was just to show how the sperm comes out from the gonads and, the whole anatomy. That I can understand. There wasn't anything sexual about it at all. And
honestly, I still don't understand that.
Yeah. And then
you might be good with that one. I'm like, why? Like,
and then they had, pictures of the STDs, what they can do to you, and, scare you out of the.
That's good birth control.
Yeah, it was. But it wasn't like, like you said, Debbie Does Dallas.
It wasn't the Handmaid's Tale graphic novel.
You're not seeing, all you literally see is just from.
Yeah, right.
You're not seeing it. Yeah.
It's the anatomical stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense. Okay. Shifting away from the dirty. There are a lot of hot topics in environmental stuff, and you and I didn't talk about this at all last time. But for instance, are you familiar with any of the issues with the dams, like the Snake River dams?
Yes,
and things like that.
Yeah, the breaching of the dams and stuff like that. Yeah,
again, hyper complex, no right answer. I mean, you breach the dams, you destroy fisheries that have now existed. You breach the dams, you reduce transportation routes for wheat growers from, for instance, the Lewiston port and things like that. But you also have an attempt to more sufficiently maintain and honor this traditional iconic deity-like figure for Native Americans and different cultures and bring back that industry. I mean, there's no right answer, by the way. I'm not looking for you to solve this. But
so I'm against breaching of any of the dams. I mean, we've had these dams up for decades. Breaching the dam causes a massive... It would return it to its original state, as far as the way the rivers flow and stuff like that, and which would be a completely geographical change to what we have. It's like you said, travel routes would have to change. Some towns would go away because now they'd be flooded or whatever the case be.
Is that extreme? Because I don't know.
I'm using that for example. I'm not sure if how close cities or any villages have built close to the river. And if you go back in the day, that river was 30 feet wider.
Oh, gotcha.
So you
Something like
might
that.
flood
Yeah,
out
yeah.
some houses or something. There's a lot of things that look like definitely take a lot of research on my end to
Gotcha.
understand all the changes that it's going to make.
Gotcha. We can punt this one. I know,
Yeah.
I
No,
know
it's
this is not like a big topic for
I
you,
don't
just
mind hitting on
wondering.
it a little bit. The thing I worry about with is our push for green energy, and hydro dams, I think, are a very great green energy. You know, you're using the water power to come in. I understand it causes problems. We've got ways for the fish to get around and help out. And I understand that there is some damage to it, but at the same time, the way people will say, yeah, I totally want these. And I think it's actually the majority don't want them breached. The congressman was actually censured by the GOP for bringing this concept up. But those that do want them breached, you know, we breach them. They're all for it until their electricity bill triples in price. And the way we're dependent, we're going away from coal. Idaho Power is being forced off of coal, not by our decision, because our surrounding states are going away from coal. So we're going to be stuck. The same thing. Like I asked on the water tour over the summer, we talked to Idaho Power at one of the dams, and I said, how many coal plants does one of these dams equal to? And they said it's the other way around. We'd have to have probably, depending on the size of the dam, but one equivalent to this, 7 or 8 to one coal plant. I was like, so how are we getting rid of all our old coal plants? How many dams are we going to have to dam up the rivers? You can't. There's not enough room to do it.
But I think that's actually a very astute point, that the dams are not effective electricity producers, and they're not effective electricity producers for the time frame that we need them. Because I think the majority of electricity, or the peak time of production for Bonneville Power, is actually in the May time frame, but the peak usage for the people that they would presumably be distributing to is like July, August.
Yep.
So we actually we're producing power, but we have to sell it to like Washington and California at a loss. Yeah. So like the electrical generation of these dams is actually not significant at all.
It's unfortunate. I'm sorry, the technology it's either not there to make it efficient, or it's just not possible to make it efficient. Take California, for example. When I was stationed in 29 Palms, you come through there, the first thing you see is the massive, right in between 29 Palms and Palm Springs, the massive windmill farms, like for miles and miles, these giant windmills. And what are we doing in Lava Ridge in Idaho? We're building massive windmill farms for California to get energy because they can't get enough. So
we pump our green energy. We're like the greatest green energy producer outside of to California, and we're like coming from outside of California. We're selling our energy, and then our electrical bills are going up.
So if one state can't provide for their own self, they need other states. What happens when what happens when Idaho needs it? Well, we're already pumped that energy out.
Right.
You know, the one thing we're not making more of in this world, land. You know, so I personally believe nuclear is the way to go. It's extremely safe. You know, okay, you can point to Fukushima, you can point to Rhode Island, you can point to Pripyat. Well, Chernobyl is what everybody knows it as. But, you know, look at that. It's highly efficient. It's very little work.
And then the number of actual, like, dangerous in that something. And first off, this is like getting mad at a 1950s car.
Yeah.
When it breaks down, it's like, okay, this thing was built like we have the iPhone. Like this is not, we're not dealing with the same level of technology, right? You're dealing with something that was built in the space age when they were trying to make rockets. And now we have, you know, SpaceX. So, I mean, if you like unleashed Musk onto, you know, the nuclear problem, I have to imagine that would be a different conversation. But yeah, like you're dealing with a lot older systems. And even if you look at the direct fallout of that, like you're not even looking at like 100 deaths. I think collectively there was destruction of property and problems around it, but deaths directly attributed to it, I think we're under 10. Like you didn't have a large loss of life. It was not a good situation, and it cost a lot to clean up and all of these other things, but it's not like, you know, a town was 50,000 was wiped out.
Yeah. Well, Chernobyl's the exception to that. You know, you have Chernobyl that wiped out Pripyat.
Yeah, sure.
Massive place. And now even today, you can't go there for very long.
Sure. Yeah. I'm sorry. I was referencing more Fukushima.
Yeah. Your modern times you're talking about you're 100% right.
Right.
It's where the technology's caught up. It's a lot safer. And why did Fukushima happen? An earthquake. It wasn't a man issue. It was an earthquake issue.
Right.
And you know, I'm not putting any blame on Japan. They don't have a whole lot of room to decide where they put stuff, but you know, they're kind of in a they're in that what's they call the Pacific Rim of Fire.
Right.
You know, they're in earthquake territory. Right. Idaho, yeah, we get a lot of earthquakes. I think I can't remember off the top of my head. We're like number 3 in the country or number 4 or something like that. And I know we had the 6 point something.
Yeah, right.
Just a year or 2 years ago.
We had like a 5 something a few weeks back.
Yeah,
I was in here with a former FBI agent doing a conversation. All of a sudden, the table's shaking.
Oh, really?
Like, yeah,
I didn't feel it, but
yeah.
I heard we did. Yeah.
But yeah, again, nuclear appears to be. It's like you can.
So
extremely damaging.
Everything we need to, but with one nuclear power plant, we could power almost all of Idaho.
Is there any conversation at the state level to do something about this?
Actually, Mark, there's been a lot of talk about it. Myself and several other legislators have said, well, what do we need to do on our end to get nuclear here? You know, you do have the INEL. Nuclear's been here in Idaho for a very long time. We do have nuclear, but not on the scale that we need for energy or something like that. The talk has been going for a while, but you know, you have the old stipulation of like 3 Mile Island, as I think I said Rhode Island earlier, 3 Mile Island. So correct myself there. You know, you still have that fear. You still have the, you know, it's extremely dangerous, but it's not. So you got to get over that, and that just deals with education and getting people. If we want to go to all electric vehicles, which I personally don't until I can see a car that can do 500 miles on a single charge with 500 horses at least, you know, and my truck can still tow 12,000 pounds on this electrical engine. In my mind, that's the only way to do it is because the grid it's overwhelming for these grids, like these semi trucks that are going to require. I don't think people are paying attention to this. These semi trucks, when they go, if they all go electric, your grocery bill is going to shoot through the roof because they can't drive as far. You know, you have a long haul rig that can go about 1,800 miles on a single fuel tank. You know, right. You can't get what is it? Tesla has a truck that'll do 500 miles, and that was at 98% energy usage. Yeah.
The other thing though is you can't get a driver to go more than 500 miles in a day though. Like their transportation.
Well, there's rules on it. Yeah. There's
so like, but it's a lot you wouldn't have to refuel for 3 days, but you also couldn't get him to go for 24 hours to get to that 1,800 mile point.
But you got to remember, he takes his rest time, you know, vice you only go 500 miles, but you can go 500 miles in a day easy.
Yeah, sure.
You know,
yeah.
Well, you only hit your 500 miles and now you got several hours of charging time. So I think it's going to take a lot longer and a lot more money because he's not hitting his maximum amount of miles in a day. He's resting more than he normally would be because he's got to rest now for, I don't know how long it takes to charge those things, but 2 or 3 hours is what I've heard.
Man, I'm so in love with the electric policies in California. I love them so much. I love it because it's like, okay, do it. Like hammer it. You don't get gas dryers anymore. You have to do electric dryer. You don't get gas cars anymore. You have to do electric cars. We already don't have enough electricity, or not we. They don't have enough electricity, and then you're required. Like it's so great. It's so fantastic. It's like. I shouldn't be happy at other people's suffering, but, and I'm not. Like, it blows. It's like, can we just come up with a practical solution? Like, stop saying that, hey, going electric cars is going to solve it. Like, go electric, everything. Like, solve your energy problem first.
Exactly.
And then start integrating perhaps options instead of requirements. You're not solving the energy problem. And like, truthfully, I think there's like a large solar conspiracy where they're like, let's drive up the cost of electricity so much so that people are obligated to convert because they just financially can't afford it anymore.
Yeah.
I don't mean to be conspiracy theorist, but it seems really clear to me.
Yeah, it's fun. I would love, me personally, I would love to see everything become electric, and electricity is so cheap that everybody can use it. You know, we'd have no pollution or anything like that.
Yeah, depending on where the electricity comes from.
Yeah.
Because if it's coming from coal plants, you're not solving anything.
Yeah, it defeats the purpose, you know?
Like you charged your electric car off of coal instead of internal combustion. Yep. Like you didn't do anything. It only works if it's coming from like the sun or like the wind or wave.
You can give me a solar farm that takes up as much square footage, land usage wise, as a coal plant and generates just as much electricity or more, then great, we achieved it. You know, But until those days, I'm sorry, you need what? Solar farms that are miles by miles to generate enough energy for maybe a small town.
Right.
You know? So
And that's how
we're not there
Skynet
yet.
gett us. They just
Exactly.
scorch the
Yep.
sun.
That's exactly
like
what
this is the premise of the Matrix. Like I don't want to be that guy.
No.
Can we just get a nuclear plant? Can I
No,
get an
thank you.
amen? Yeah.
Yeah, not to, we're not there with technology.
Sure.
Maybe one day we will be, sure, and that'll be great, but we're not there. And forcing it on people isn't going to get us there faster.
Yeah.
So if anything, it's going to make it worse because people will, they will see this, they will see the long runs of the charging stage, the price is going up, and they're going to hate it, and then they're going to blame it, and that'll push off any advances in the technology.
Right.
In my mind.
Yeah,
Because
I think
support it.
those obligation. You have to let the market correct itself,
Yeah.
right? If you make it advantageous, like I had a swim coach growing up. He was really conservative for the area, and like when you're 16, you're kind of like, oh, everybody should be fine, and then you get older, you're like, everybody's not fine, but it's not everybody's fault. It's that guy's fault. Like he did this to himself. So again, he was one of the first guys that I met that was a real clear conservative. And I was like, he actually ended up being my officiant at my wedding. Like he's great. We're dear friends to this day. He's wonderful. And he's mad that I moved up here to an awesome spot and he's still stuck there. But like, I'm working on him. Yeah. Anyway, but he put solar on his house and I gave him unending hell for it. And he's like, listen, man, I put a spreadsheet down and financially it was advantageous. I am fiscally responsible. I don't give two squats about the tree I'm saving.
Yeah.
I just want to save some money. And I was like, shoot, can't argue with that.
That's kind of the way I am. I'm all about, so I would love to have.
Is that why you put solar on your house? Awesome.
I haven't put any solar on my house.
You're like, that's a lie. Fake news. People hate solar here.
I would love to do it just to, I mean, I don't, this so really sound wrong. I don't care about the environmental benefits. I'm a cheap person. Yeah. If it saves me some bucks, I'm going to do it. And that's so that I would put solar on my house if I could afford it.
But just think of the political backlash, Senator. Yeah. Think of you put solar on your house. This is your last term. It better be your retirement solar.
Yeah. But so realistically, let's look at how government works and a real life example. So when I was stationed in California, we owned a home in Temecula.
Wait, you are Senator Trakel, right? You're not Representative Trakel.
Yes, Senator Trakel.
Oh my God, I got nervous all of a sudden. No, am I screwing this up? Have you not told me? Like, do I have lettuce in my teeth too? All right, keep going.
So the drought came along, right? So we can't use water. We can't water our lawns. We can't do a whole lot of things. So they cut way back on how much water. They even changed how much a household's allowed per capita for family members. Instead of being a family of 4, they went to a family of 3, I think it was, or something. It's a long time ago. So, okay, we're in a drought. We're doing our part. My yard can die. Not a big deal. Right. Not worried about it, even though my HOA was going to fine me for having a dead yard now. So do I pay the fine from the city or do I pay the fine of the HOA?
God, I love these people.
There's things that need to be fixed. I love
these people.
But anyways, so, okay, but this is what happened with government. Hey, we're not selling as much water to keep our agencies running. So what happened? They jacked the prices up. So you're getting... I think I was getting almost 1/3 or half as much water as I used to be allowed, but I was paying 3 times as much for it because the government wasn't making enough money off of it. So this will be the exact same thing if we do something with solar, right? You think your prices are going to go down and drop. It's not, because the government's not going to shrink Idaho Power. Idaho Power is not going to shrink, and there's going to still need that same amount, if not more. But well, let's be honest, more, because they're
those prices are never
prices will just skyrocket. That's how you'll end up paying more for less efficiency is what will happen. So that's another reason why I'm not a big fan of the push against it, is because government's not gonna and the corporations aren't gonna drop their budgets down to reflect. It's not. Nothing's ever a cost savings. I hear that all the time in the Capitol building. We do this, it's gonna be a cost savings to the taxpayer. Well, then the very next year comes along and we implemented such and such thing. Guess what? I'm looking at that appropriation bill and it went up. It didn't go down, it went up. So it was never a cost savings to the taxpayer because the money just shifted somewhere else and then they took more of it.
Do you think that people will actually come to the realization that it's impossible to save? Like the whole idea that we have to, if you're a corporation, you have to make more money this year than last year. And at the very least, it better be in about 3.5% because you have to use more based on inflation. Yeah. Right. So the idea that we will shrink the budget significantly, or like we're going to have cost savings and actually reduce it, even if we spend the same amount of money or get the same amount of services and products, it's going to cost more money year on year. Like we're never going to go backwards.
No, you'll never go back. And I'm not so I'm going to separate the two between the government and private corporation. Private corporations are there to make money. They provide a service or whatever they do is for a profit, obviously. And that's the way capitalism works. So I don't blame them. Obviously, they got to stay ahead of inflation. Otherwise, they got to lay people off.
Sure.
And the argument we've seen is the pay gap in between, for example, the CEO and your on the line worker. You know, let's say the CEO makes like 300% more, and people make that a big deal. Like, that's completely wrong. That's a private corporation, private sector. If that's the way they want to operate, then that's the way they operate. If you don't like the prices, you know, that they're paying for you for a salary, find a new job or create your own business, you know. But then it comes to government. Sorry.
You're good. You're good.
It comes to government. We have that exact same pay gap, right? But the difference is government's not in the business to make money. It takes money so that it can operate. But I don't see that outcry there. So is the private corporation ever going to come down? No. Is government can come down. So just an example is Idaho is 44th in the nation for median household income. And I think the average is somewhere around $58,000 right now. The only place I can find that broke the money down this way is ZipRecruiter. But ZipRecruiter has on there for government employees, we are 22nd in the nation, and the average is falling at $106,000. So why is the government sector making twice as much as you and I as taxpayers? And so when I say that, don't think I'm talking about the DMV guy. Don't think I'm talking about the public works guy or something like that. They're making $40,000, $50,000.
Wait, so who's making this? Because you're not getting
It's the
paid.
hired bureaucrats. And well, if my other senators and legislators hate me for saying this, but I'm paid too much money, in my opinion. So I work, I understand it's part-time. Is it really part-time? No. If you want to be a good legislature, you work when we're not in session. I keep up with current events. That's when I'm writing bills. That's when I'm, you know, reaching out to constituents. I still work, you know, and I'm not complaining about that because I ran for this job and wanted this job. But I think we're paid too much. If you everybody's like, well, you only make $19,000. Well, that's the salary. There's per diem and there's fuel that go into that as well. My W-2 is somewhere around $26,000. So you take that, and instead of the 3 months average that we work, you extend that an entire year. That's $100,000, which to me is too much. I actually calculated this a while back. I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but my area, I think the median income is $57,000. I divided that by 12, and then that was how much I should make as a senator every month, in my opinion. And that's how I think every elected official should be paid, is the equivalent median income of his area. But that's where it's at. It's your bureaucracies that are getting paid the six-figure paychecks. Don't come after me, Boise State. But you have Boise State, the highest paid state employee in the state, Boise State football coach. All he does is teach football, $1.6 million.
Man, I've never been able to get over those stats. The UC system actually provided a $500 million stadium to Cal right after I graduated.
Wow.
And they were paying the football coach something like $4 million per year. And they did it under the guise of, well, if we improve the football program, first off, we can't improve the football program without a new stadium, and we can't. And unless we get a better football program, we won't be able to attract like the best students.
Yeah.
So, like, what in the shit are you talking about? Like, what? Yeah. Right. And here they're cutting classes and they're all of these things. It's like, God, man, the football, nothing against. Nothing against. I played football, you know, believe it or not, as small as I am. And actually that's why I couldn't play it in high school. I just never got bigger. Everybody else did. But I love football. But that's the problem. We as a society put too much on sports emphasis over the education. So you get, and you know, people have made the argument, well, he's worth it because the money he brings in, sponsorships and stuff like that. And I was like, well, if tuition was dropping due to all these sponsorships, then maybe I'd be all for it, you know, but it's not. The deans, there's a lot of positions in Boise, and I'm not just picking on Boise State, but there's a lot of positions there that pay a hell of a lot of money. So that's what actually brings up the average.
Yeah, what I would actually, that's definitely what brings up the average. For example, we're still doing budgets. I voted a couple against budgets just because I will take the full-time employees divided by how much is going in just employees, and the average is coming out to like $150,000 per employee, and it's just that's a government job. You know, I've got people that live on my street. I've got people in my area, and there's people all over the state the parents are working 2 jobs, not meeting the median income. They're below it, and they're having a hard time affording medications or stuff for their children or making rent. You know, everybody's talking about today the housing market is too high. The young people can't get into it. They're working their butts off and barely getting by. But we've got government that is paid by the people living extremely comfortable. Last year, an argument was made to give judges, which are already making 6 figures, a pay raise because property taxes were high and they were having a hard time making their property taxes. I'm sorry, if you're getting a 6-figure income and your property taxes, you're having a hard time making it, you're living well outside your means. And my argument on the floor was, well, what about the guy that's only making $45,000
and his property taxes are high?
And his taxes are high. He's not getting a raise. But we're going to take more of his taxes to give to somebody else. It's just not right. And it's backwards. So government, what I'm actually hoping to do is this an election season, unfortunately, but what I'm hoping to do is to pull all employees and in the state of Idaho, how much is paid into employees and find out what the average is. And if I take everybody that I just put here is above $80,000, I think that's still too high, but I'll compromise with those that think I'm going too low. $80,000, and we took everybody that makes over $80,000, split it to 80, and took that money and started moving around. I wonder how much that would save the taxpayer. And then, for example, how much could you think of the better quality education if teachers were starting at $60,000? You know, you have superintendents making $170,000. Superintendents, one person. And teachers starting out, I think the state minimum that a teacher can start out is like $44,000. Imagine if teachers were being offered, and you know, teacher shortage. Well, what if we stopped paying superintendents so high and other bureaucrats so high, and teachers were starting out at $60,000? You know, that probably bring in a hell of a lot more teachers.
Yeah, the teacher payment's always such a curious thing to me because I didn't go into public education specifically for that reason. As a young man, I was like, there's no way. I love teaching, but there's no way I'll ever be able to actually afford to like raise a family, especially in California at the time. So I had to go into private education, and I've always argued for more money for teachers. And a very good friend of mine was like, listen, teachers are teachers because they're not motivated by money. And I was like,
I got that.
I was like, what? What? She's like, yeah, think about it. Like, they're not like, you can pay them more and they'll just say thanks. But there are people that come in and start working at 40 or 50. And again, I'm not saying that's the right answer, but I do think that we need more resources going to our public education. Okay, that's tough, actually. I don't know that I can actually stand by that statement because I would need to see exactly how the money's being used. And I think this is on a municipality by municipality pace, district by district. So I do know that there are places like Valley View School District. Again, when I spoke with Alicia Purdy, they passed a bond because they were showing people, you know, like leaks in the roof. They're like, look, this is the bucket that catches the water that comes out of the ceiling that's supposed to be stopping the rain. And like, this is why we need money. And people finally realized, okay, that's a problem. Now, that's an extreme case. Obviously, you mentioned kids sitting on the floor in the hallway, right? Sewer line breaks. Like, these are problems, and these things take money, and they're not addressed immediately because they don't have an infinite amount of money. So, you know, how we fund schools, obviously, I don't know this stuff. I'm just a monkey.
Yeah. It's, coming, you know, funding schools, it's really, I'm in the opinion that schools are adequately funded. You know, they're not funding enough. You know what? We're about to give schools, the governor, $2 billion over the next 10 years. That is, and we just gave schools $350 million. And then prior to that, I think it was somewhere in the $200 million. So it's some of the largest increases to school spending ever. And the school budget is already 1/3. It is the largest portion of the state's budget. My question is how much money is enough? How much do you want? Like, what is it enough? We're about to give $2 billion, like massive amount of money, right? Is that enough money? Is it going to be? I actually believe, just like any government agency, there's a lot of misuse of those fundings going in there. And you'll have, how do I put it? You'll have, for instance, you know, my school district created there's some animosity between my school district and our local police department.
Oh,
Yeah, it's really not cool. And now it's costing the taxpayer. So they created a position called a public safety officer. SRO is your public safety officer, right? So this individual does not, as far as my understanding is, this isn't law enforcement in any way, shape, or form. They're not responsible for that with the school. They're just taking care of like road cones, blocking off access, making sure the children are protected, protect safety, like crossing the street and stuff like that. $80,000 a year. It doesn't exist anywhere else in the state.
What's the application process for this? I'm asking for a friend.
They get a
Are there requirements? What?
I don't know. Maybe
got to move cones. Anything else?
Yeah,
I can wave. I can smile.
I mean, I'm very simplifying. I'm sure what they do, and I'm sure I'll get a phone call being very angry that I talked to them. But it's from this position.
By the way, if somebody's upset about you saying this, like, I'd be happy to talk to the administrator and understand more about what this is.
I definitely would be. I'd be like, what's the justification for this?
Yeah.
What
does this person do?
Exactly. And it's a complete waste of taxpayer money. But see, this is it. We gave the school money, and instead of brand new textbooks, or the money going to the classroom for supplies or to help the teachers, it went to an individual to pass out road cones, which we don't need. It's not necessary. Another thing, I can't confirm this. Well, I'm not going to say because I can't confirm it. I don't want to speak to speculation.
Let me speak out of my ass. Don't you do it.
But and that's just one example, but there's a lot of, just like any government agency, sure. I guarantee if I could put on my company gunny hat and be in charge of a budget of the entire district, and I was this yay and nay guy, definitely cut it and find a lot of misuse of spending. I found it in the military. But unfortunately, the difference was why are you saving so much money? You're going to spend it because we're not going to get it next year. And
right.
Oh, I thought I was doing a good job. I got my butt chewed for saving money.
Public agency.
And the next thing I know, I am frivolously spending it because I'm being ordered to.
Yeah, right. Right. That's
but that's not the way the state government works. Unfortunately. But
well, listen, Senator Trakel, it's Saturday. You came in here on your weekend. I don't want to take your whole day.
No, great.
I want to confirm you're running again.
Yes, okay. I am running again. I do have an opponent, unfortunately.
Yesterday was a cutoff, right?
Yeah, yesterday was a cutoff. It was a last minute thing. It's, I don't understand why. I've got 100% ratings with national organizations for my conservative level. So my question to them is, what am I not good on conservative wise? Where have I been against the platform? I'm going to say it. This is an example of, I've been a huge target because I put the people first. I'm not concerned about government I am concerned. I'm about the government getting bigger, overspending, stuff like that. People are my first, and I've been very vocal about that. And that's why this person's running against me. They want me gone because I'm shining a light on the ugliness, and sorry, they can't control me. They've come in and tried to get my vote. For example, somebody tried to give me a hard time for taking $1,000 from AgriPac in the general election last year. I will put it this way. However that money is given to me is one thing. How it's spent is another. If that's ammo for me to get out and get reelected. And for people to say that I was bought and sold by AgriPac, I then asked them, why did I vote against the pesticide bill that they wanted so badly? There's a lot of optics out there, but that's it. I can't be bought. I can't be owned by these people because I'm always going to put my constituents first. And that's why this person's running against me, because the establishment wants the control back. They want to be able to push corporations first, unfortunately, and continue to keep us down. So
gotcha. Well,
that's what I'll say about that.
The second time I've talked to you, I really enjoy and appreciate you coming in.
No, thanks for having me. I love coming here.
Yeah, it's great, man. Good luck finishing out the session. Hopefully you guys don't go into May.
Yeah, oh man, no. April. It's got to be April.
I gotta get on with life.
Please, I want yeah. I'm already tired. I feel like I've been there for a year.
Yeah, watching everything unfold over the last almost 3 months now. It is the kind of thing where we're like, oh my gosh, just watching this stuff is kind of exhausting. But again, you're in there in the trenches. So thanks for what you do for the state of Idaho. Thanks for what you do for your constituents.
Yeah, no, and thanks to you for getting this information out and trying to give people a chance. Most media today is very one-sided. So I'm glad to have you coming in here and asking questions and letting us give real things. Better statesman, for example, on my flag bill, sent me an email. I said, hey, I'm more than happy to answer any questions. Go ahead and send them to me and I'll answer them as fast as possible. That was it. They ran the article. They interviewed a bunch of Democrats, but never sent me any questions.
I don't understand these media outlets. I
Very
don't like,
one-sided.
and I get it. Like, I don't make any money for doing this. So I get it. There's no money in what I'm doing. Like, I understand that, but it's just, man, I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. We'll solve that one another day. Thank you for coming in. Have a great weekend.
Thanks for having me. And same to you. Thank you.
MTU Studios is the proud producer for the Ada County Sheriff Podcast, the Idaho Wildlife Federation Podcast, the State Representative Ted Hill Podcast, the Idaho State PTA Podcast, and many more. If you or your organization is thinking about starting a podcast, MTU Studios would love to help. Just check out mtustudios.com.